Good afternoon. I welcome you to the United Methodist Church of Branchville. And as we begin this time together, my name is Nancy Robinson. I am blessed to serve here at the United Methodist Church. I would ask that you silence your cell phones or turn them completely off to preserve the sanctity and dignity of our time together today. Psalm 108 tells us, "The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. As a parent shows compassion to their children, so the Lord shows compassion to the faithful. For the Lord knows our frame and remembers that we are dust, and to dust we shall return. The steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon the faithful, and the righteousness of the Lord to the children's children." We come together this afternoon to give thanks to God for the life of Nancy Louise Weiss. We come to remember, to share through prayer and scripture, and to celebrate her life, especially through the gift of music. The gift of music was a gift that she shared so generously with the world. We come to remember how she touched each one of your lives. And my prayer is that our hearts will be comforted as we share together, and that God will grant us grace, that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. I invite you to pray with me. Eternal God, we praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their course in faith and now rest from their labor. We praise you for those dear to us who we name in our hearts before you. Especially, we praise you for Nancy, who we entrust to your mercy. To all of these, grant your peace. Let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years and bring us at last with them into the joy of your home, not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. A service to give thanks and celebrate the gift of Nancy's life would be empty if it was not filled with the music that she loved. We give thanks for her friends and colleagues this afternoon who will share their musical gifts as a tribute to her.
Wow, it's really great to see so many familiar faces and old friends. Up till about 10 or 11 years ago, Nancy and I was privileged to sing with Nancy in a group called Noteworthy with a bunch of other talented people. And after Noteworthy, Nancy and I hit the road along with Robin and formed a duet called Eclipse. Now, we didn't make much money at it, but I had an awful lot of fun. Together, over the years, we hashed through hundreds of songs from Bing Crosby to Joe Stafford to Lady Antebellum. And Robin was really good at learning songs really fast. We appreciate that. When Nancy would bring in a song by, say, Bette Midler, whom she dearly loved, I would suggest that we do the original version by Rosemary Clooney. She would bring in a song by somebody named Pharrell Williams, and I would go, "Who?" So from each other, we learned a lot about different musical styles. I kind of miss that. We thought we were Steve and Edie, for crying out loud. So here's a song that Robin and I picked out, originally sung by Keely Smith, and I think Nancy would have really liked it. It's called I Wish You Love, and it's about a breakup. Goodbye, no use leading with our chins. This is where our story ends. Never lovers, ever friends. Goodbye, let our hearts call it a day. But before I walk away, I sincerely want to say, I wish you bluebirds in the spring to give your heart a song to sing, and then a kiss. But more than this, I wish you love. And in July, a lemonade to cool you in some leafy glade. I wish you health and more than wealth. I wish you love. My breaking heart, and I agree that you and I could never be, but with my best, my very best, I set you free. I wish you shelter from the storm, a cozy fire to keep you warm, but most of all, when snowflakes fall, I wish you love.
As Jesus prepared for his own death, he took time to speak with tenderness and compassion to his disciples, his closest friends. And he offered them these words from the Gospel of John in the 14th chapter, reading selected verses. Hear now the good news of the promise of God. And Jesus said, do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live.
It did. It works so well that it's not going to work now. Do you think you can recover it, or should we just move on and maybe put it in a little bit later? Okay, that sounds good.
Our second reading from Scripture is from the book of the Revelation to John, chapter 21, verses 1 through 4. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." Thanks be to God for these readings from his holy word.
The Lord is my shepherd. when the day is long and temptation strong, and the cords of death encompass me. I cry out in need of deliverance. You take my hand and give me rest. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Even though I walk in the dark of night, I fear not, for you are God, and you care for me like a sparrow. At my side you give me strength. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to learn if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I can say I do believe that's true, and I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet over orbit as it circles the sun, like a stream that heats a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship launched from an
ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blamed me for. And then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a comet over orbit as it circles the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the woods. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better, because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
Central to the Christian faith is the expression of God's great love and salvation for humankind through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In our first scripture reading this afternoon, as Steve said, Jesus is describing to his disciples his imminent departure. He will leave this earth, but he assures them that although they will not fully understand or clearly see where he is going, he promises that he is not abandoning them, that he's going ahead to prepare a place for them, and that he will always be with them. He tells them to just believe. Because he lives, they will live also. Death will not have the final victory. Nothing can separate us. Nothing can separate them from the love of God. There is a promise of eternal life. That what we see here is not all that there is. And there is a time when all the pain and sorrow of this life will pass away for those who believe, where a time where all the tears will be wiped from their eyes and our mourning, crying, and pain will be replaced with eternal peace and joy in the presence of God and the assurance of resurrection. We hold these words tightly to our heart as a way of comfort and assurance, because we do cry. We do mourn. We mourn Nancy today. But we also give thanks to God for the gift of Nancy's life, and we are asked to hold that tension, the promises of the seen and unseen, together. We give thanks for the promise of eternal life, and that Jesus makes that promise to you and I as followers to go ahead and make a place for each of us. And although we may not see Nancy any longer, although we will miss her physical presence, because of that promise, we entrust Nancy into the safe, loving, and merciful arms of Almighty God. When humankind got caught up in trying to figure out how to live by the law, how to follow the Ten Commandments, and all the other interpretations of the law that were thrown in there, Jesus was asked, and we hear in Matthew 22:36-40, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus responds, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. As a woman of faith, Nancy Weiss did her best to live according to these two important commandments through both the joyful and the difficult times of her life. And although I did not know Nancy very long as the pastor of the United Methodist Church before she moved to Florida, I have heard so many stories about the generous way she loved the world around her, not just in words, but in actions. Nancy reflected the light of Christ through her life. 1 Corinthians 13 is usually read during weddings, but I also think it's appropriate to read during a funeral, during a memorial service, because it talks about the attributes of love, attributes which Nancy practiced and taught through her life. Hear now the words of 1 Corinthians. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. The love that the Apostle Paul is talking about is not just a feeling and an emotion, but is something that one chooses to do. Love is not cheap. It costs something. It often doesn't come easily to us because of that cost. Perhaps that's why it can be hard sometimes to live this way, to lay down our lives sacrificially for others. More often than not, though, I think we're fooled into believing that we don't have enough to give away and that we need more than we can give. Author Francis Chan said, God's definition of what matters is pretty straightforward. He measures our lives by how we love. Today we give thanks for Nancy's love, which she generously gave away. And I pray that we each continue to grow in that love. There is no time to waste. Because one thing every death of a loved one reminds us of is that time is short. Every death makes us stop and pause and hopefully reevaluate things. We have the choice to take advantage of that pause, to embrace one of God's be still moments, or continue on the road we're on with the cruise control on, comfortable but oblivious. As we remember, as we celebrate Nancy's life today, we do so remembering love, and I would say we honor her love by doing love in our own lives. Nancy was the beloved wife for 10 years, but also the best friend for 16 of those years to Marty. She was a loving and devoted mother to daughters Samantha and Deborah, a loving mother number 2 to Zachary Weiss and son-in-law John Gillison, and a loving grandmother to her 3 grandchildren, Lucia, Joanna, and David. Nancy was the devoted daughter to her late mother Marlene, as well as her father William Cohn, who was her earliest singing partner and who she lost as a child. She was also the sister to David. Nancy was the first niece to many in the Flack and Cohn family and maintained a strong, devoted relationship with her aunts, uncles, and cousins. Nancy was a cherished friend to a special group of friends, the Brigantine Buddies. She was a friend to many. Nancy was a Jersey girl. She attended Union High School, where she was the prom queen in the class of 1973. She shared her love through the many gifts and talents she was given. Nancy was gifted with a beautiful singing voice. She sang in high school with the 4G chorus. She sang in the choir at this church. She was a member of the Noteworthy group, and she performed in local musical theater. But her talent didn't stop there. It extended to arts and crafts and decorative skills, especially during the holidays. For many years, Nancy decorated this sanctuary for Easter and Christmas, along with other church holidays, and it was always amazing what she would do. She hand-painted Christmas ornaments of this church, I'm told, as a church fundraiser one year, which are truly the prized possessions of many still in this congregation. Nancy launched her own company, Loveywear, and her company added sparkle not only to clothing and accessories, but to the lives of those who wore her creations. She was a wonderful hostess and cook, and she carried on the traditions of her mother, Marlene, by making delicious recipes from scratch. Nancy valiantly fought the cancer that took her life with courage and grace. Her nurses looked forward to helping and taking care of her because she always was poised and thinking about the other person. She possessed a friendly, caring, thoughtful manner, and that enhanced her personality. She was always there to lend a hand, they tell me, and to go the extra mile for a friend or coworker, and she touched so many lives through her work at Bristol Glen and through her work in this church. She had a smile that lit up a room, which you can see on the screen. Let's take a few minutes to remember that beautiful smile and the gift of her life as we view this slide presentation, The Story of Love.
You gotta give a little, take a little, and let your poor heart break a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. You gotta laugh a little, cry a little, before the clouds roll by a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. As long as there's the two of you, you've got the world and all its charms. And when the world is through with you, you've got each other's arms. You've gotta win a little, lose a little, and always have the blues a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. As long as there's the two of you, you've got the world and all its charms. And when the world is through with you, you've got each other's arms. You've got to win a little, lose a little, and always have the blues a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. That's the story of, that's the glory of love.
Lately when I'm in my room, all by myself, in this solitary gloom, I call to myself. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never made a fool of you. You used to be so wise. Hey there, you on that high flying cloud. Though he won't throw a crumb to you, you think someday he'll come to you. Better forget him with his nose in the air. He's got you dancing on a string. Break it and he won't care. Won't you take this advice I hand you like a mother? Or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you too much in love to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the other? And out the other. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Are you talking to me? Love never made a fool of you. Not until now. You used to be so wise. Oh, that was a long time ago. Hey there. What? You on that high flying cloud. Though he won't throw a crumb to you, forgive. He's got his nose in the He'll have you dancing on a string. Break it and he won't care. He won't care. Won't you take this advice I hand you like a mother? Or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you just too far gone to hear? Is it all gone in one ear and out the other?
The way you wear your hat, the way you sip your tea, the memory of all that. No, no, they can't take that away from me. The way your smile just beams, the way you sing off key, the way you haunt my dreams. No, no, they can't take that away from me. We may never, never meet again on the bumpy road to love. Still I'll always, always keep the memory of the way you hold your knife, the way we danced till 3, the way you changed my life. Oh no, they can't take that away from me. No, they can't take that away from me. The way you hold your knife, the way we danced till 3, the way you changed my life. No, no, they can't take that away from me. No, they can't take that away from me.
At this time, I believe that there are some friends from the Brigantine Buddies that would like to share, and then I would invite anyone else who would like to share a short remembrance or story. If you could come up here, it just makes it easier for everyone to hear. Thank you. Okay.
To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I will never return. To the angry, I was cheated. But to the happy, I am at peace. And to the faithful, I have never left. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, remember me. As you look in awe at a mighty forest and its grand majesty, remember me. As you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never be gone. All of us here will remember Nancy in different ways. Nancy and I met in a chorus class our first year of high school and had an immediate bond and friendship which didn't end at graduation. In the years after, we took a golf trip to Florida, sang, bowled, and played softball together. 4 of us, Nancy, myself, another Nancy, Debbie, and her longtime friend Susan, graduated from Union High School together, and we met Stephanie and Cheryl through bowling. We had so much fun together that in 1992, a long time ago, we decided to do a girls' weekend and landed in Brigantine, New Jersey. The Brigantine Buddies were founded, and we've been making happy memories ever since. We enjoyed it so much that we then added fall getaways to Atlantic City and later added additional trips to Florida. Except for the COVID years, it has been an annual pilgrimage every June. As years passed, though not as wild as we were in our younger years, we continue to enjoy our time together. The 6 of us have formed an amazing bond and would do anything for each other. This was our tribe. Of course, I can't share all of our memorable Nancy moments, but here are a few. 1998. As we each arrived at different times, we met for dinner at Il Verde restaurant in the Tropicana in Atlantic City. In hindsight, it probably wasn't a good idea to actually meet there in such a refined restaurant, since we hadn't seen each other in a while and had so much catching up to do. After 30 minutes of raucous laughter, we were approached by Felix, the maitre d'. He said, "I know you ladies are having fun, but we've had complaints from other diners. Would you please stop laughing?" Well, that was all we had to hear, fuel for our fire. It was really quite painful to try to suppress the laughter, and trying to figure out who complained was very entertaining. Luckily, Nancy acquired allies in the waitress and the bus girl, and they gave us hints as to who the party poopers were. They said it was nice to have people enjoying themselves in that stuffy place. 2003, we all remarked on the pretty dress Nancy was wearing one night. She proudly announced that she got it at the thrift shop for 50 cents. Later, when we all met at the end of the night, she reported that an elderly man had been flirting with her, and she bragged that it must have been the 50-cent dress. 2006, we decided to go on a booze cruise around the bay in Atlantic City. It was a couple of hours, and we really enjoyed it. On our return, we understandably needed to find a ladies' room. We stumbled, quite literally, into the ladies' locker room in Harrah's. The facilities are available for people staying on their boats in the marina. Nancy discovered the shower. Before we knew it, we had all piled in and laughed till it hurt. There were a number of amused onlookers. 2011, fall weekend getaway to Harrah's in Atlantic City. While Jeb checked us in, Nan and I were mesmerized by the piranha in the huge fish tank behind the lobby desk. Very quickly, Nancy and I were making fish lips and were in a deep discussion about and with the fish. At one point, Nancy suggested that after we check in, we should suit up bathing suits and nose plugs and get in the tank. Unaware that the check-in guy was listening to us, he whispered to Deb, "Do you want me to put them on the list in case they lose the room key?" To which Debbie replied, "No, I'll keep an eye on them." 2006, to our dismay, Nancy announced that she wouldn't be joining us for Girls' Weekend this year, which was very unlike her. It seemed she didn't want to go away with us because of a guy she was dating. She didn't want to leave him. We were persistent but couldn't talk her into joining us until he convinced her that she should go and be with her friends. We realized at that point that we were now second fiddle to Marty. I need water. Speaking of Marty, when Nancy told us she had met someone, we were curious about him and somewhat cautious for our friend. We kept asking Nancy about him and wanted to know more. So she suggested that we all go out for dinner with our significant others to meet Marty and get to know him. Poor guy didn't know what he was getting into. We interrogated him with questions about his past, whether he had a criminal record, his intentions for the future, his feelings for Nancy, and anything else we could think of. I am so dry. I am so dry. I'm sorry. I have to just get a sip of water. I'm so dry. Cheers. Okay, back to the story. Okay. We then put on rubber gloves and broke out our forensic kit and dusted his glass for fingerprints, placed his used silverware in a plastic bag, collected hair for a DNA check, and pretty much put him through the ringer, with Nancy laughing the entire time. He was such a good sport, and Nancy loved it. Needless to say, he passed our vetting process with flying colors. And Marty, on behalf of the Brigantine Buddies, we would like to sincerely thank you for being such a wonderful caregiver for our very dear friend. She spoke often of your care for her, and we were so grateful for you. We love you. Whether she was rolling up her jeans to wade in the fountain, jumping on a street cleaning truck, singing, taking the Shorty Longmobile for a test run, wrapping up every night dancing in the Eden Lounge, declaring hourly, have I mentioned that I'm happy to be here? The epic Halloween parties, whipping out the expandable fork in a restaurant to nab food from nearby diners, or proudly modeling her 50-cent dress, Nancy was always making us smile. Her huge heart, her beautiful voice, her smiling face, her fun-loving personality and sense of humor, her warm thoughts and words, her caring and loving nature, and her infectious laugh. This is how we will lovingly remember our Nancy.
Is there anyone else who would like to share at this time?
I would like to read a poem entitled I'm Free. The author is unknown. Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I'm following the path God laid for me. I took his hand when I heard his call. I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to work, to play. Task left undone must stay that way. I found that peace at the close of the day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy. A friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Ah, yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your heart and share with me. God wanted me now, he set me free.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sherry Varelli, and Nancy was my friend. And before I even start, I have to say what a beautiful slideshow that was, Zach. You did, and Marty, you did a great job. But I think Nancy would be laughing hysterically because of everybody here that was in chorus or in Noteworthy with her. The mess at the beginning of this. Can't get the music going, can't get the slideshow. It was just like an everyday thing. And Nancy's going, again? What happened again, you know? I have a little something I want to say, and it's not a lot, but the font is like 18 because I can't see to save my life. So if you'll pardon me. For 17 years, I was the founder and director of Little Lost Arts. It was a children's theater and we performed all over New Jersey, including in this very church. And I first met my dear friend Nancy. She was like a devoted and loving mother to Debbie and Samantha, and she signed Samantha up for acting lessons. Nancy did everything to help Sam learn her lines. She'd make her costumes. She'd sit in the front row of every show with Debbie, with Marlene, who was an absolute doll, with George, who was an equally talented performer, and anybody she could muster to and force to buy tickets. She was always rooting and cheering for her kids, and Samantha always had a giant smile on her face. When we finally found a permanent home in the historic Ratch Theater, which is right next door in the old barn, some of you remember, I was able to convince Nancy and Debbie to be in our first show. It was the first time Nancy had ever performed or acted on stage. And I'm not saying singing, but actually getting a script and having to memorize it. And I think that she did it because it gave her a chance to be with her family. And she was, as everybody knows, she was so family oriented. So through every rehearsal, every show, every cast party, she was with Samantha, or she was with Debbie, or she was with all her group of friends. And for us, it was such a joy because she was just so fun to be with. So the first time she acted in a play, she had Debbie with her, and she played an angel. And I said to Marty, I'm really good at casting. I just kind of discovered this, you know? I made Nancy a goddess. She was an angel. She was a witch. I mean, I was just like, we had so much, huh? Oh, I'm telling you, she was the goddess of love and beauty. Is that good for casting or what? But she was an angel the first time. Well, after that first show, she froze on stage, by the way, and she couldn't remember her line. And I didn't have my script with me, and I was on the side because I was doing music and everything else. And she just stood there, and she was like, it was a very long time, even though it was only maybe 30 seconds, you know. She got off and she goes, never again am I ever going to freeze. I am going to practice my lines from now on. And she was a perfectionist, you know. When I thought, okay, you can't learn this anymore. You got it down pat. No, we need another rehearsal. I mean, everybody who ever did anything with her knew she was just such a perfectionist. But the talent and her stage presence, she did it as a hobby, but if she had ever chosen to pursue it professionally, we would have seen her on Broadway, I have no doubt. She was excellent. So it was a little children's theater, but it grew into a community theater. I knew everybody because it was so local and the town is small. Everybody knew me. My husband said, you know, you could be mayor of the town. But it was Nancy who was the one who could have been mayor. Have you ever heard the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none? Well, Nancy was master of everything. She sang like an angel. She painted like an artist. She dressed like a fashion model. She made friends with everyone because of her cheerful, sunny disposition. And I never knew how she fit it all in. I mean, she kept in touch with the Brigantine Buddies, which were her friends from high school, a group of gals from Curves, the fitness center, which she was an avid fitness buff. She performed with Noteworthy, and she made all of them her personal friends. And she was a philanthropist. I mean, whether she was doing things for the PTA, she was raising money for the church, she was doing things with Bristol Glen, with the seniors over there. She was always helping everyone, in addition to raising her kids and dealing with her own personal problems, of which she had many, but if you asked her, she was always positive. You never really ever heard her struggles, you know? And everybody loved her because she was a true Mary Poppins. She was an optimist, and she could always find the good in every person or every situation. It's what endeared her to everyone. Nancy was always a savvy businesswoman, and she was ahead of her time. She started this eBay shipping business, if anybody ever kind of remembered, before eBay even became popular. And almost 20 years ago, she decided to do online dating. And I was scared to death for her. I mean, nobody ever knew anything about that. And I said, Nance, are you kidding me? You're going to go meet strange men. She found the strangers. I said, you know, I hope to God you're telling someone. Are you telling your mother? Are you telling her where you're going? And she says, relax, Cher. I'm just going to the diner, and everybody knows where I am. We're just going to have coffee, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go home. So I was like, okay, well, whatever. So I was always on her. What do you think? What are you doing? Who are you meeting? And she goes, I am having a ball. And I said, really? She says, I'm meeting such great people. I said, really? Anybody good? No, nobody good, but they're so fun. Yeah, we're having coffee, we have an interesting conversation, and then at the end of the night, I said, you know, you're a really nice guy, but you're not the one for me. And then she met Marty. And oh my God, Marty from day one, she was like madly in love, and she said, Cher, I found the guy. He's everything. He's everything I ever hoped to find. He's a good-looking guy. He's really successful. He has a great son whom I love. You know, she just absolutely loved everything about you. And from there on, I hardly saw any of her, Marty, because you monopolized her time. I mean, she just wanted to be with you, like she wanted to be with you forever. I know that you thought you would spend the rest of your life with Nancy, Marty, but know that Nancy felt lucky because she got to spend the rest of her life with you. And Samantha, is she here? Samantha, my darling. Samantha was in every single play. Nancy signed her up for acting lessons when she was, I don't know, Sam, you must have been like 6 years old. Well, Debbie, when Debbie was in our first play, Debbie said, not for me. And that was her first and last play. And she decided, I'll hand out programs. I'll move scenery. I'm not doing this again. You know, but Samantha had the voice of an angel just like her mother. And she also had the soul of an angel just like her mother. She was good and she was kind, and Nancy was so proud of you. As proud of you on stage as the day that you got married. And like your mom, you just grew up to be a beautiful woman and a wonderful mom. And you gave her the greatest gift that she ever had in her life, which was your 3 children. And I'm so glad that she got to see that. Zach, you were the son that she always wanted. And she absolutely adored you. She thought you were the cat's meow. And talented, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about how well she thought of you. Debbie and Samantha and Nancy were in our first play. And our very, very last play, we actually did a staged reading with costumes and everything in Times Square. And guess who was in that play? Marty and Nancy and Zach. And Marty played the devil, Nancy played a witch, Zach played, you played like the Rod Serling kind of guy. Yeah, and he recorded everything, and he made, you know, I wish we had the tape, and I wish everybody could see that because it was so fun. And I mean, we were on Times Square, in Times Square, so it was just like, oh, it was awesome. It was awesome, and I thank you for that, and I'm glad that we did that because, again, Nancy did everything with her family. You know, I'm looking at the monitor before, and it said her birthday, and then there was a dash, and then there was the day that she died. And the birth date isn't important, and the death date isn't important. It's the dash in between. All the ways she lived her life in between. And that is the most important part, because it doesn't matter when you're born or when you die. It's how you live your life that's the most important thing. And Samantha, I wrote this for your children, and I'm getting ready to walk off this stage, so please just bear with me. I wrote this little poem for your children. But for everybody here, take out the word grandma, put in the word friend or relative or wife or mom. And my grandma is a star. When my grandma lived upon this earth, she shined like a star on stage. She sang just like an angel and made art that was all the rage. She had a heart that was good as gold and a generous spirit throughout. And she looked just like a princess. She was beautiful inside and out. My grandma was a shining example of all God wanted us to be. She loved her friends and family and church, but most of all, she loved me. When my grandma lived upon this earth, her star was so brilliant and bright that God carried her up to the heavens to light up the darkness of night. And whenever I want, I can talk to her. I just wait till the sun goes down. Then I look right up to heaven. She's the brightest star around. God bless you, Nance.
I would encourage you to continue to tell stories. Sometimes we shy away from speaking about a person who has passed, but the family wants to hear stories. The family wants to share stories. And I pray that the stories that you have of Nancy when you gather for lunch today, you will continue to tell them. You will continue to tell them at holidays and when you gather together. And I ask that God will seal those stories as living legacies into your heart. At this time, I would invite our choir to come forward. Almighty God, receive Nancy Louise into the arms of your mercy. Raise Nancy up with all your people. Receive us also and raise us into a new life. Help us so to love and serve you in this world that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. God of love, we thank you for all with which you have blessed us even to this day, for the gift of joy in days of health and strength, and for the gifts of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home and friends, and for our baptism and place in your church, with all who have faithfully lived and died. Above all else, we thank you for Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death, and rose for our sake, and who lives and prays for us.
Sometimes the load is heavy, and sometimes the road is long, and sometimes
As we come to the end of our time together, I share with you this blessing that you will go out into the world, remembering the love that Nancy shared with you, and that you will go out remembering the love of God, the love that moved Nancy to share her gifts generously, to treat all with dignity and respect, and to live life with laughter and joy. So go out into the world in the name of a God who is creating and redeeming and sustaining us every step of the way. Amen. I invite Marty to come forward, and he has some final closing words for us.
There was a picture on the slideshow of us in a boat that was taken by Melissa. And I only learned how to skipper a boat when we got down to Florida, so a little late in life. But one of the things they ask you when you get on the boat is, who's your lookout? And I'd always say, well, Nancy's always had my back, so it's got to be her. So that picture where she's hugging me from behind, that's my lookout. She always had my back. I feel like she still does. Before I say the final words that I want to say and the thanks that I want to give to everybody, I want to acknowledge two people that were part of Nancy's life for a big part of it. One is Judy Murray, who is a big part of this church as well. But Nancy and Judy spent many years together on many causes. And Dave, I think you remember New Year's Day brunch, which was spaghetti and meatballs and sausage. That's how we started out the year a few times, but it was a good time. Judy was an important person to Nancy. I think Nancy was an important person to Judy. Let's hope they're both together again. And also, and you saw one quick picture of Samantha and Debbie's dad, George. So after Nancy was Nancy Cohn, and before she was Nancy Weiss, she was Nancy Bushman. And George, who sadly passed away only several months ago down in Florida as well, was an important part of Nancy's life, as well as an important part of her entertaining life, because for many years they sang together. George had quite a stage presence about him, so for sure. Putting it mildly. I remember your mother at your wedding, when George got up to sing, poked me in the ribs and said, watch. He said, I'm going to do one song, and she said, he'll do 6. And I think he did, although honestly, they were all very entertaining. In fact, Zach, you mentioned it. Guy knows how to carry a tune pretty good. So he did. But those were two important people, so I wanted to certainly acknowledge them. Nancy would have told me, make sure you check your notes. Don't go and ad-lib this, because first and foremost, I want to thank Pastor Nancy and this beautiful church. This was always Nancy's spiritual home. I understand more now than ever why. I was here sporadically, but the warmth that comes out of this church and the warmth that you showed me to put this service together and the product is just amazing. So thank you, thank you. And also, in the back, but Nancy Carver, that beautiful slideshow that I was blessed to find so many pictures, wouldn't have been half of what it is without Nancy Carver and her beautiful skills, not only putting the music together and the timing of it and all the curveballs I threw you at the last minute and added some pictures there that Sherry would send at the last minute. I have to get those pictures in. And so thank you, Nancy. To the choir, thank you. Always a big part of Nancy's life as well. And even when we had somewhere to go after church, she'd sing in the choir and maybe leave before the service was over. But we, and come on, it's time to go. But thank you, and Cindy, what can I say? How beautiful was that? And by the way, there are no bad witches, all good witches, and you're a good witch, and that was magnificent, magnificent. And I don't know if Alan is still here. Yes, he is in the back, but Alan, thank you. Your music selections are always top of the line. A couple of the music selections for the slideshow came from Alan's suggestions, and some of the songs, I can hear Nancy singing them now. A few of those songs that were in the slideshow, Nancy performed not only on stage, but here in church, and Alan sort of jogged my memory on a few of them, so thank you there. And certainly last but not least, even though I shouldn't be so kind to the Brigantine Bunnies, because they gave me a hard time at first. They truly did. Especially one individual in particular, but we won't point that person out, who's sitting in the third row on the aisle. But, not only were you a big part of Nancy's life, and always she looked forward to going, and you're right, that first one, the first trip she took, I encouraged her, go, go, go. And I remember it was a rainy, I guess it was Friday, Thursday or Friday, but it was a rainy, cold February day, and I said, go, and she didn't want to go, but she did go, and then we had a good time, and then I got the calls, and the vetting process began, and it sure was worth it for Nancy, but you've become my friends as well, and I don't know that I would have gotten through the last 5 weeks as I sort of stumbled through it the way I have at this point without your concern and your love and your companionship, being there at very special moments, and then being there after the fact, and I think always being there. I stumbled a few times practicing the speech, and I was going to say, when I wanted to say Brigantine Bunny, a couple of times I said the Bradenton Buddy, but maybe that's a Freudian slip. Maybe you'll become Bradenton Buddies, and always, as you pass through, you'll stop and say hello, and I hope you do, because that'll help to fulfill my life moving forward. Maybe I'll even convince a few of you that the West Coast is better than the East Coast, but some of you won't buy that until you experience it. But thanks to everybody, that's some picture. Isn't that some picture? Jeez. She really did love it. She even made me look good in some of the pictures. Not everyone, but some of them I looked pretty damn good, and that's because I was right next to Nancy in those pictures. There's a story behind almost every picture in that slideshow, but I won't bore you with every one of them, although I will talk to you about the one where she was in her bridal veil, ringing the bell on, by the way, the 8th hole at Lake Mohawk, because if you tee off and you don't ring the bell, it's the 8th hole. You could hit somebody in the head with the ball. So anyway, and for her, she rang it with such gusto. That was on our wedding day, as a matter of fact. So that was a fun as well. But the L in Nancy stood for Louise. She wasn't crazy about the L for Louise. Many people didn't talk about Louise. So my nickname for Nancy, fairly early on, was Lovey. And I always called her Lovey. In fact, I seldomly called her Nancy. I always called her Lovey. Lovey this, Lovey that. And she wound up naming her business Loveywear. And this is my advertisement. We've got plenty of these to go around. I see a few in the audience, too. This was Loveywear. So she was always Lovey to me. And she'll always be Lovey to me. And she didn't have a nickname for me. So sometimes she called me names, but most of the time not nicknames. But, we talked about her inner beauty, which was so much a part of her. She was just a beautiful person inside, and she was an attractive woman, but she was beautiful inside, and she was caring and kind and generous to everyone. I've heard in the last 5 or 6 weeks so many stories of her kindness and her generosity and her caring, and I'm going to share one or two, and I'm going to read them because I only knew a little bit about it. But first, on the Union High School class of 1973 posting, there was so many comments, and most of them centered around how Nancy was beautiful inside and out. And one post talked about how she was the kindest person in high school. And a friend of mine, I don't know if Doug's here or not, if he is, but he pointed out, he said, it's a rare combination to have beauty and caring and kindness in one person. And that's a tremendous trait to have, and Nancy had that. I witnessed it, I experienced it, I lived with it. And sometimes I'm not the easiest guy to deal with. I'm not a day at the beach. But Nancy was always there, always there. Scott Norton, who's not here today, but at one point was worked with Nancy. Actually, Nancy was Scott's administrative assistant in Bristol Glen. Reminded me of a story, and Jeff, you might remember it too, but there was a woman at Bristol Glen, her name was Peggy Kovac. And apparently Peggy mentioned to Nancy at one point that she wanted to put together her life as it was starting to come to an end. She was an elderly woman, her health was starting to fail. So Nancy agreed to help her. Nancy always put these books together. I didn't bring it up, but I got a book about Marlene that she put together. I got a book about a trip we made to California that included business that I showed this week at the office, Bill. She always put books of special moments together. And she helped Peggy Kovac put her life story together. And it was apparently, and I remember it now as when Scott reminded me, it turned into about a 4-month project. Nancy worked with Peggy every, I don't know if it was Tuesday night, I kind of think of it as Tuesday night, for about 4 months. And then would come back and go over what they went through and go over pictures that were given to them and stories that were given to her that she had to proofread. And she bit off a lot, maybe more than she anticipated, but she never complained about it. And she saw that project through to the end. And that final product was beautiful. And it's a remembrance to her family. Peggy has since passed on, but to her family, it's got to be just a perfect memory. I'd love to review that again. I don't know if there's a way to do that, Jeff, but if there is, I'd just love to, because I remember it, and I remember Nancy talking about it. I even remember complaining to Nancy, that's a lot of time and effort. No, that's what because that's the person she was. Last story about her kindness. Debbie, when you were down in Florida, and you stayed an extra couple of weeks because we needed you there, and Nancy needed you, and I think you wanted to be there too. One day you went to the hospital and you brought a bag of chocolate or a box of chocolate. It was a Godiva chocolates. And I took kind of a half a day off. I wasn't there that day. You were there. And when I came back that night, Nancy was giving the chocolates out to the nurses who were taking care of her. And she turned it into a kind of cute thing. Like they'd come in and they'd give her whatever medication and she'd give them a chocolate. And then they'd come back and she'd give, and it went on for about a week. And it's a true story that the nurses all told me that we all look to be Nancy's nurse when we come to work every day, because she's so nice and so kind and so considerate that it's just a pleasure. And the ones that weren't her nurses assigned to her during the hospital days would come in and check on her anyway. And they were, at the end of the day, because of Nancy's kindness and caring and generosity, they were such counsel to us toward the end, when it became necessary to make some decisions, including hospice, which Nancy was well aware of, and made that decision herself. But it was the nurses and one particular nurse practitioner who guided us into the direction we needed to be guided to. And it was the right thing to do at the right time. Nancy knew it, and she consciously agreed to it. And the last thing I just want to say about Nancy is you know about all that generosity, you know about all that kindness and inner beauty. What you may not know about Nancy, and it became pretty clear to me pretty early on when she was diagnosed and then went through so much of the treatments that she had to go through. And there were good times in that treatment. There was hope and there was optimism for a time, but it didn't last as long as we wanted it to. But you know what? She was as strong as they got. Stronger than I would have been under the circumstances, stronger than maybe a lot of you would be, I don't know. But she was so strong and so courageous. She never complained. She never lost her composure. She was just optimistic. She went through, I don't remember how many CAT scans, how many PET scans, how many bronchoscopes or bronchoscopies, how many debulkings, which is not an easy process, at least 3 that I can remember, and never complained, always remained optimistic. And that's the Nancy maybe you didn't know. She was as tough as nails. I used to say to her, "You're as tough as dirt." And she was. She really, really was. And she was just great for that. I want to touch real quickly because when we first met, and it's true, we met on Match.com. I never admitted that for many years. I used to tell stories about, no, that's okay. You spilled the beans, but that's okay, Sherry. I used to tell stories. No, we met, Nancy couldn't find a car in the parking lot, and I ran into her. She was in a bar, and she dropped her purse. Any story that would make me seem pretty cool. Where the fact of the matter is we met on Match. But the story goes this way. I had been on Match.com for a couple of years, and I really didn't have a lot of success. I would meet somebody, and they didn't care for me. Or I would meet somebody, and they liked me, but I didn't like them. It never meshed. Never. And so it was about 2 years into it. I was pretty jaded. I said, you know what? Enough of this Match stuff. I'm done with it. I really am. And I didn't return a lot of the emails, I guess, we got back then. But then Nancy sent me one. And I was, I think I waited a couple of days, then I finally responded to her. I forgot how it worked. I think you emailed back and then you decided to talk to each other. So long story short, we did. And we talked on the phone. And I remember her saying to me, "You're not from around here, are you?" And I'm from the Bronx, if that's what you mean. She said, "That's where it's from, the Bronx." Maybe I've lost some of that accent. I used to have a lot deeper accent. Now maybe it's not as deep. Or maybe it is, and I don't realize it myself. But so we agreed to meet for dinner, I guess, or at the Lafayette House, right up the street here on 206 North. And we met, we sat, we talked. We had a very nice time. And Nancy was certainly attractive enough for me, that's for sure, and nice enough. But I couldn't say I was head over heels, and I was very cautious. I think Nancy was maybe a little bit more in it than I was at the time. But we decided to meet again. We took a little walk around. I don't know if you all remember at the Lafayette House, there was a duck pond by the Lafayette. It's gone now. I went there yesterday. It's not there anymore. I gave her a kiss at the duck pond. And we agreed to meet. I said, "I'll call you." That's what I did. I said, "I'd call you." And this was a Friday night, and I guess finally on Sunday, because it's very strategic when you call for that second date. You don't want to be too quick, but then you don't want to wait too long because it's very difficult. So I think it was Sunday. I flipped the coin. I said, "Sunday," right before the Lion football game, so I'm not in a bad mood. And we agreed to meet that following Friday for dinner. And this time she said, "I'll come to your place." She didn't quite want to introduce me to you and Marlene and Debbie and Shotzi yet. So she came over to my place. I lived in Vernon at the time. And as the week unfolded, I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens with this deal. And as the week got closer to Friday, I started to get a little more excited. She was really nice, and she was pretty too. And yeah. By Friday, I was excited. I was at a food show down in the Raritan Center, and I left early because, dinner wasn't until 7, but I skipped out of there with a little hop in my step because I was excited. And we met, and we went to dinner at Milano's. That's right, it is Milano. I forgot, but it's in Vernon, and it's a BYOB place because I don't like to pay for wine. I like to bring my own wine. And it's much more economical. And the way we drink it, it's even that much more economical. So we get there, and unfortunately, they don't take reservations for a table of 2. If you take 4, 6, or 8, you can get a table. You can reserve a table for a certain time. 2, you have to wait. We get there, it's probably 7:30. They say, "Sorry, we're pretty crowded tonight. It's going to be at least an hour." Okay, got the wine, go out front. I got as a bachelor at the time, I had a corkscrew in the glove compartment. I mean, really. We proceeded to sit in front. There are those stone steps or whatever they are, like a bench. And by the way, I knew all the Vernon cops at the time, so I could do anything I wanted in Vernon. I had a PBI card from every cop. I knew them all, thanks to a neighbor of mine. And so I felt I could do it. So we sat there and we drank our wine. And we had a great talk, and we laughed, and we talked, and and I'll say this, and this is the truth. By the time they called us in and we sat down at that table, I was in love with Nancy. And that love never ended. It really never did. It just got better. We were talking last night. I think we said I love you to each other every day. I don't remember days that we didn't. Every day. Nancy would say, she'd look at me, she'd say, I love you so much. And I would look at her and I'd say, I love you more. Because it was true. But every day. She had a sign in our new home in Florida that she had found somewhere, and it always said, always kiss me goodnight. It wasn't literally hung over our bed, but it was in the room. Always kiss me goodnight. And it's still there, and I still do. So, but it was a great love affair, and it remains that way. I feel her presence every day. I always will. And, that's kind of what I want to say. I want to talk about two songs. One that you're not going to hear, but I'm going to explain the two songs. And music was such a big part of Nancy's life. My life, too. We had different tastes. I would go to a Bruce Springsteen concert in a heartbeat. She had no interest in ever seeing Bruce Springsteen. Can you imagine that? A Jersey girl, never wanted to see Bruce. Couldn't understand him. I'd play Born to Run. Can't you feel it? Nothing. So she loved Billy Joel. But music was a big part of both of our lives. So two songs. One that she'd always ask me to sing to her at bedtime when she had trouble going to sleep. And it was the lullaby song, the Brahms lullaby. But I would put a different spin on it. I would always make up my own words when I sang. And I think it gave Nancy a kick. Even when we would be driving down the road and the radio was on, I would just make up my own words to, I'm hooked on a feeling, I'd say I'm stuck to the ceiling, and things like that. But anyway, with the lullaby song, it was unique because she'd always say, sing me the lullaby song. And I would start out and say, lullaby. She said, no, sing it the way you know how I want you to sing it. And I would put on a falsetto voice, and I'd start out with, lullaby. But I would change the word. Go to sleepy, close your big bloodshot eyes. Lullaby, Sandman's here. And as often as not, she'd either fall asleep, and this is a true story, or I would fall asleep. I had fallen asleep in the middle of that song many times. But that's one of our songs. And the last song is this beautiful song that was just between us. And I've told a few people I'm going to play it, but I didn't tell anybody what the song was. But it had special meaning to us. Whenever, and I never sang it solo, I would sing it with the artist because I couldn't carry this tune. But it's a beautiful song, and she'd look into my eyes, and I felt like king of the world. And with that, here it is. Nancy, I love you.
Put your dreams away for another day, and I will take your place in your heart, wishing on a star never got you far. And so it's time to make a new start when your dreams at night fade before you. Then I'll have a right to adore you. Let your kiss confess this is happiness, all your dreams away. When your dreams at night fade before you, then I'll have the right to adore you. Let your kiss confess this is happiness, darling, and put all your dreams away.
On behalf of Marty and the family, I thank each of you for attending this afternoon, and God bless in your travels today.